to put something in the chat box. And anybody obviously can do a screenshot of the chat box if you want to introduce yourselves. And matter of fact, I don't know why Jeff didn't, I see Jeff King drinking some wine. He didn't send me any. My wife's got me drinking chicken soup because Jeff is sick and I was nowhere near him. Somehow I'm going to get COVID through the internet. But whatever. For those of you that, I don't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, so this is going to be a little different than what I posted about. We're going to talk about 2020 very briefly. Since we decided to do a webinar Tuesday with the teams, there's a little tiny bill that that's trying to get passed tonight. And there's been an enormous amount of questions that were sent to us as a law firm about kind of what we read. And I can tell you we are damn good lawyers, but we still can't read 5,563 pages word for word in a 12-hour period. So what I'm going to provide you at the very end is kind of what we skimmed and the best summary we can do. I believe some of it will be more defined as they create these groups that are going to help us out. And I stress help because there's a lot of promise for those of us that are landlords that do C-class multifamily. So I told someone today, they asked if I was excited about it. I said, I'm very cautiously optimistic. So I think that's a good word to use. But so I couldn't think of anything else to say besides fireside chat. Jeff, can everybody hear me well? Sound is good?
Yeah, they should.
Okay.
For those in the chat that would like to opt in that may not have opted in, just add that in the chat and I'll do tomorrow I'll just kind of put everything together. And again, I'll send it out in the afternoon to everybody that has opted in.
I guess I won't see you tomorrow, Jeff, huh?
You can see me on Zoom.
That's exciting. And you'll watch the participants. So fireside chat, just thought it was something neat to say. We're going to kind of talk about, 2020 started off pretty strong, at least from our perspective as a law firm. And then we do, some of you guys know we do some of our own ventures as well. But as a law firm, our Q1 for 2020 up until March was way ahead of Q1 2019. So we're going to go into some little pictures, courtesy of Rob. Rob is very creative, and Rob decided to play with an app that no one should have ever given him that allows you to merge faces. So Rob did a kind of a spoof with me and Tom Cruise, who's not my favorite person, but I like Mission Impossible. So he thought it'd be funny to market us as Mission Impossible, us meaning myself and Tom. I do like my hair in this picture. So if Rob can do that in real life, that would be great. But basically Mission Impossible is 2020. I think all of us have some sort of experience that could be possibly negative. With some interaction with what's gone on between coronavirus, the economy, civil unrest in certain parts of the area. It's been quite a ride. And personally, I hope we don't have another 2020 and 2021. So with that, so we started out in 2020 without this, and now we're in 2021 and we have this all over the world. This is courtesy of Rob. That's actually supposed to look like coronavirus. But essentially, as quickly as this happened, it seemed like it went from something in Europe to all of a sudden it is everywhere. Can't get away from it. Everybody's freaking out. Then it slows down. And now we have, if you look at the news right now, we have another spike and possibly another mutation, though no one seems to think it's any deadlier, but it may be a little more contagious. But we just can't seem to get away from this. So what did we do? One of the first things we did as a law firm, because we had an enormous amount of people reaching out to us, is don't do anything stupid. We came up with this, it's a stupid term called a covidiot. I should have patented it because I've seen it on a couple other sites, but basically don't do anything stupid. It's kind of what you guys have been told by your mentors or other people. Always try to be patient. Don't knee-jerk react. There were quite a few clients and non-clients that were knee-jerk reacting. So we were doing, as a firm, a lot of hand-holding, I didn't think I would be providing pre-bankruptcy advice, at least not as of 12 years ago. And so I had to brush up on that, actually took some courses. We tried to advise some clients what to do, what not to do, to be patient, wait and let's see if the government creates some sort of special incentives like the CARES Act or the HEROES Act, which ultimately did. I'm not going to comment as to how effective they were, but they did try to provide some sort of relief in what appears to be something that no one could have predicted. And this was, I'm kind of trying to go in chronological order. One of the things we had tried to do, and one of the things we try to do as a law firm, is be creative. Many of you on here actually were able to get into deals either as passives or as syndicators at the end of Q3 and Q4. Record number of deals. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Like, never seen so many deals in my practice as I have in Q4 trying to close. But part of that is being creative and how to see if there's a way to work around some of the restrictions with COVID, you know, long-term leases versus short-term leases. Can you do short-term leases so that way you don't really have to evict anybody? If you're doing a month-to-month lease, does it make sense to do that? And at the end of the month, if they haven't paid, the lease just terminates. That was something we were working on. Some of the courts have said that doesn't really count. And if someone had COVID or had some sort of layoff during the month-to-month lease, then they were considered a holdover tenant, and they go month to month, and they were protected like anybody else. But we were always looking for kind of ways to work around the restrictions that, quite honestly, between the CARES Act and the HEROES Act, seemed like everything was stacked up against anybody who invests in multifamily, single family that collects rent. As a matter of fact, it looks like that up until, quite honestly, last night when I saw a version of the bill trying to be passed right now. And for the record, guys, the bill has not been passed yet. Trump is threatening to veto it right now, but not in a way that most of us would think he would try to veto it. He's actually trying to veto it because, at least what I just read literally a minute before this one I went on, he's trying to increase the single person payment from $600 to $2,000 and increase the couple's payment from $1,200 to $4,000. As at least as it was put by his spokesperson, $600 and $1,200 is not going to do anything for anybody. So what that tells me is it's most likely going to be passed. It may just be passed at a higher dollar amount. I don't see any of the other provisions. None of the provisions were discussed, at least in the press release. So we also talked about waterfalls. I don't know if any of you guys listened. We had this thing called Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls with TLC. Shows how old we are. But part of what we were doing was there was a lot of discussion in May, June, and July about how much money was sitting on the sidelines and kind of waiting for the opportunity. And how do you attract money? And how can you put yourself in a position with your passive investors such that they feel like you're in this together? Passives don't like to see GPs take all their fees up front, an acquisition fee, you know, a due diligence fee, high splits on cash flow. They want to see kind of metrics being hit, hurdles being hit, and then they're okay, at least in our experience, with paying out the GPs. So we had a long discussion about waterfalls, waterfall structures. A lot of people aren't taught that in some of the mentoring classes. It does get a little more complicated as you get into waterfalls, and you have IRR hurdles and other KPIs that you hit. And once you hit those as a syndicator, you make more money. It's basically like a commission-based incentive. So we talked a lot about that, had a lot of clients incorporate that. This was probably our most popular topic we had towards the middle to end of Q3. I was still using the COVIDiot word, but blind funds. I would say we probably had, Cindy, we probably had 25% of our funds for Q3 were blind funds.
Yep.
That's it? That's all you're going to say? Yep.
Yeah.
You guys all know Cindy. So we had a lot of people ask about blind funds. And for those of you that don't remember, and we still do, I call them opportunity funds. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a huge value add. It's just getting a fund together aggregating capital, or at least aggregating capital that you can call through a mechanism called a call, and go and take down an asset very quickly. With all the dry powder sitting out there, there's not a big difference with it sitting in an investor's bank account, essentially losing 1.5% with inflation, or sitting in a fund account that can be deployed, with 2 or 3 or 4 weeks advance notice. So a lot of discussions on blind funds, some very creative investors. I've seen some people do some really impressive things with the blind funds. I've had a couple of them on to speak about it. So blind funds continue to be very popular. I don't like the term blind. I like to call it an open fund. And you can have funds that are not blind, that are open, meaning you're constantly raising capital. And as you locate an asset or identify an asset, then you go and raise additional funds for it, all in one fund. Blind fund means, hey, these are the parameters, these are the targets I'm looking for. And as soon as I find it, we're going to go after the asset and go through diligence process and buy it. You want to have the money readily available now so you can compete with large funds. I promise, guys, I'm getting to the high point, which is the new bill. Most of you know, or many of you know, Julie Peterson, excuse me. She's a very good friend of mine and Cindy's, and we love Julie. And Cindy has spoken on her show a couple times. I've only been able to speak once, so we know who Julie likes more. Julie wanted to be here, but I was essentially yelled at, but in email, why I started this at 7 o'clock instead of 6, because she normally does hers 7, which is 5 on the West Coast, and she wanted to listen. So apparently, guys, I'm never allowed to do this at 7 again, because I need to make sure Julie's okay. But she's great. Julie provided us, this was in June, incredible information on state of the market, what the lenders were looking for, what the lenders did not want to loan on. She went and broke down all of the fees, all of the escrows, everything. So I think, especially during times like this, and we're still in these times, I hate to say it, we're still in these times like this, you want to constantly be in contact with your lenders. Julie's with Old Capital. We've used Paul Peebles, great guy, James Ing, all good people. There are other brokers out there that are good as well. We just have a great relationship with these guys. They've been phenomenal in providing us information. So I would strongly encourage, it's not a plug, they didn't pay me to put them on here. Happened to be a webinar we did, but strongly encourage you guys to reach out to them before you even go under LOI on a deal. You want to know what the market is thinking, market meaning what the lender market is thinking, before you even go to LOI. So great information from them. And this was my favorite. This was my favorite because I thought Rob really outdid himself with the infographics. And to see, I call him Broda, which is Brad Yoda. So we have Broda up here. It's me and Brad Sumrock. Most of you guys know who Brad is. So part of what we were trying to do in the end of June is tell people, hey, listen, we're all kind of nervous. We don't really know what's going on. A great time, if you haven't gone through some sort of education program, now is the best time. You're certainly not chasing deals at the moment. And it's a great time to, if you thought you didn't have time before, everybody, not everybody, a lot of people are sitting around at home, forced to be sitting around at home. And so now would be a good time to get education. So we had a great turnout for that. Yeah, Brad was a little green when he was doing it, but his color came back to normal afterwards. Hopefully Brad's not watching this and won't get mad at me. This was a fun one. So we're almost done. I don't know. I assume a lot of you know Anna Kelly. She's been very successful, career businesswoman, went into multifamily, I think like, I don't have my notes in front of me. Let's say 7 or 8 years ago, but seriously went into it, I think 3 years ago. And she and I were emailing back and forth, texting back and forth. And so we both noticed something that seemed very, I'll use the word eerie, kind of a global economy with COVID. And so I never talk about conspiracy theories ever. I might read them once in a while and I might be like, huh, that could make sense if I could buy into it, but I never can really buy into it. Anna and I, and she's the same way, but we saw things that matched. I don't know if you want to call it conspiracy theory, but this kind of global economy that's been going on in the background with the world's most richest from around the world talking about a change in currency and how a huge event that would affect the world to the likes that no one had seen would be the great trigger for it to start. And it should be, I think it was 2026, may have been the year that it will be in place. So we talked a lot about it. Again, could be just conspiracy theory. I don't know. Again, Rob with the artwork was great. If you're interested in listening to it, all these are on YouTube, but it was an interesting conversation to say the least. Anna's a very sharp person, and we had some really good information. She produced some documents that I had seen as well that were verified. So it was just interesting. If you can't sleep one night, do that. Well, I wouldn't say that you can't sleep one night, because then you're going to be thinking all night long. Definitely worth listening to. And this is the one that scared everybody. So this was in mid-July, and all of a sudden we had these, I don't know if you guys remember, because as Americans, we actually forget things very quickly. So this is 5 months ago, almost six months ago. And we had a group going around the country that was essentially a grassroots group telling essentially C-class and maybe B- tenants, just don't pay your rent. You don't have to pay your rent. They can't kick you out. Don't pay your rent. We got notices on our own properties. I would say at least a dozen or more clients sent us copies of their notices. These are notices that were posted on people's doors, just saying, hey, under the new bill, under the HEROES Act, you don't have to pay your rent. They can't evict you. And so this was going on. People were freaking out. I think for the most part, including ourselves, we all had very good tenants. I'm sure this affected people in different areas, but it didn't seem to affect us as much. But this was a big issue. So we talked about this. We talked about what you could do to prevent this. This was part of the HEROES Act. One of the things I thought was horrible in the HEROES Act. And then kind of beginning Q3, excuse me, towards the middle of Q3, we started seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Cases are down. People are starting asking questions. A lot of newbies that I guess were looking online for something additional to do because they weren't working as much. So we put together a Fund 1 and a Fund 2, kind of part 1, Funds 101 and Funds 102. It's actually a pretty good combination if you want to go on the Counselor Law YouTube channel to look at it. If you want a refresher, we basically talk about everything funds in a total of 3 hours. Each one is like an hour, maybe hour and a half. Very good information. Very excited about it. This one, Rob has this issue with me and famous people. That's Merrill Eastwood up there. He's my brother. But this one, a lot of you guys did not see. I mean, we had a pretty good turnout, but I've talked about this in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and people seem shocked. So just a refresher, because this is going to be important in 2021. SEC approved a proposed rule that will allow people to go in and raise capital and get paid a fee to raise capital without having a GP ownership interest or liability. Okay, I want to repeat that. The SEC has approved a proposed rule. So in other words, it's not law yet, but they approved a proposed rule to go out, send it out for comments. I think there's only about 15 days left for comments on it. And then the SEC is going to look at the comments and adjust the final rule as they see fit. But it's pretty serious, and it's pretty much moving forward because they created some videos online to explain what it was, created a whole packet. Long story short, obviously people know that you cannot raise capital for a fee or a GP interest without having legitimate GP duties and liability unless you are a broker dealer, okay, or one of the original managers of the deal. And so in an effort to try to help finance small businesses, and this is a lot related to COVID. So in an effort to, find people who have money, connect them with smaller businesses, we're all considered small businesses by the SEC. If you have a $200 million portfolio, it's still considered a small business because your capital in that's probably 50 million. That's small, the SEC. So this is kind of a way around the broker dealers. Broker dealers hate this. which is ironic because they would never do a broker dealer. A broker dealer would never give us capital. We're all too small. Typically 2 to 5 million is the smallest broker dealers will go. Some of the smaller shops will do maybe 500,000, but you run into the issue with, if you've got one investor coming in with 5 million, you're going to bust the 20% rule that most of the agency loans have. So you kind of have to be careful. So what the rule is allowing, under a very strict set of circumstances and geared more towards 506Cs, you guys know the difference between 506B and 506C capital raises. I can go in and I can bring Bill, who's not looking at me right now. There he is. Sorry, man. I could go in and I can say, hey, Bill, I've got $8 million in investors that need to place their capital. I like the way you do deals. Explain your deal to me. I will do the introduction for the 8 million. Bill and I enter into an agreement, a contract. We're actually working on them in our firm for a couple people in preparation. It's a package. It's not just a simple document. And Bill can say, okay, great. So I want 3% to bring you that money. And I want that 3%. He could say either 50% up now, but you're going to wait until the money funds, or 100% at close, paid out of closing through an invoice by Bill. Provided Bill meets all the requirements, that will be a completely legal transaction. The nice thing as a syndicator, and I syndicate deals as well, is if I'm Bill, I may not like Merrill as a person, and I may not want Merrill, Bill's smiling, may be true, I may not want Merrill as my co-GP. I like Merrill's money, but I don't want Merrill. So quite honestly, it benefits both of us. I might want a quick $240,000 to bring in $8 million. And if Bill does the math, Bill's going to realize that 3% he pays me up front is far less than what I would get as a co-GP if I was in the deal for 5 years. So long story short, you guys are going to see this pop up very quickly. You are also going to see an enormous amount of fraud that is going to accompany this. There are going to be people with BS documents. They're going to be people who are not abiding by the rules. And again, the rules are going to be formalized sometime in Q1. And you guys, we'll be one of the first law firms to issue an advisory opinion on it, or an opinion on what we're doing. And we'll modify the docs that we believe need to be modified. But this is going to be a huge deal for raising capital. And we're getting into kind of Q4, which this is, and why this is important. I'm showing some of Rob's artwork. We were talking about raising capital in black or white or 50 Shades of Gray. He's trying to be a little punny with the movie. I'm going to get into what I was saying a second ago. Again, reason I'm showing you guys some of the artwork. This is all Rob's creations. We do some helium drilling. A lot of you know about this project we have in Leander Springs. It's a mixed-use development project. I'm not trying to solicit capital for these. They're all 506C, so it's completely legal. Just kind of showing you some of the. Rob is very humble, and he's on here, but he has been enormous as far as being our director of marketing. And this thing, real quick, this is something I tried. This is me I see people are interested in this. Apparently, some people haven't seen this before. So just by the way I'm talking, you guys probably know I have a little bit of ADHD, or we call it ADD. I call it business ADD. I like to do a lot of different things. Those of you that know me know I like to do a lot of different things. They don't always work, but hopefully most of them work. And so I have the best team in the world that allows me to be free, allows my mind to be free. And if we can get it to stick to the wall and it passes the bankruptcy test, which I used to be a bankruptcy lawyer, then they take it and run. And so I had this wacky idea, and most of the time they shoot down my ideas. And I said, well, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we kind of put an idea I have together, but we kind of let some of our followers kind of see how a potential business idea comes to fruition. So Rob came up with it. I personally don't like being referred to as a squirrel, but Rob came up to it as follow the squirrel, because you ever see a squirrel, it's constantly looking around and it, jittery and fidgety and blah, blah, blah. So we created this follow the squirrel thing, and out of it, myself, John Montero, I don't know if John is on here, David White, Cindy, and a couple of others are looking at this project that I had in my mind, I talked to John about it. We were on the same page. He and I both used to do single family rentals. So we're launching, this will be in Q1, probably the end of Q1, Lakeside Luxury Retreats. It's a fancy way of saying fancy short-term rentals. What's been cool about it, and I'm not trying to raise capital for it, I think what has been interesting from a marketing standpoint is we try to take a different approach to try to build our funnel. Everybody on here tries to build a funnel. They all try to build a funnel. They all try to get interested people in them, and some things work and some things don't, but you try to get people interested in what you're talking about. So it's shocking when you allow people to become part of the decision-making process. Like, hey, here's a pro forma, high-level pro forma of why short-term rentals at 3 lakes within a 90-minute drive of DFW makes sense. Factor in COVID, why it really makes sense. And we had some of the most incredible responses, and it's okay if it dies. I just want to show people the process, what normal people go through, and to show people it's okay to put together something that doesn't work. That's part of the learning process. So far, this is looking really good. I think the best thing we had was I decided to do a logo contest without really telling Rob. And Rob is very sensitive. I can't see Rob on mine right now, but I'm gonna see if I can see his expression when I talk about this. There's Rob smiling. Rob is very sensitive because he's right-brained. And if any of you have worked with right brains, they are absolutely brilliant. They cannot add 1 and 1, but they create the coolest looking number 2. And not that his stuff is number 2, but the coolest looking numbers you've ever seen. You like that, Rob? You'll probably incorporate that, something I do. So Rob gave me 4 choices, and I said, screw it. I'm going to put them online through this, and we're just going to let the people decide. It's just a logo. To Rob, it's probably a hell of a lot more than a logo. To me, let people decide. So they picked the logo up here on the left, but oh my God, Rob got so many comments, mostly good, some a little critical. Rob's a big boy, he's fine. But we probably had Rob's, he's muted, so I have no idea how many comments we had. Rob, I'm gonna unmute you for a second. How many did we have?
We had over 100 comments, some good, some bad, some like, wow, that's, but yeah, no, it was really interesting to see people's input and what they thought of it. And no, it was, I would have liked it if I'd known it was going to happen, but that's okay. That was half the fun of it. Like, what's going on? We got some traction here.
So I'm going to mute you, Rob. Thanks, Rob. So one of the things Rob didn't know is I also posted on LinkedIn. So we had a total of about 265 comments, aside from likes and whatever. And what was shocking, guys, and I was kind of trying to prove something. John and I were trying to prove something. When people are interested and feel like they're a part of what you're doing, we have a ton of people asking about the investment terms. And while we're working on it, that wasn't really in our minds at the time. It was, hey, let's build a bigger funnel, and people get interested and they're excited about, how you're doing this. Are we giving away trade secrets? I mean, I guess some people argue that, hey, your pro forma is your trade secret. Cindy, myself, and Greg have seen every single pro forma in the world. And at the end of the day, guys, they are 99% the same. They tweak the numbers a little bit. They'll modify a little calculation. They're all basically the same. Everybody has different pain points when it comes to what their investment is and how much they want to pay limited partners. So to me, I think it's more exciting to see people's reactions and let them, actually be a part of it. And so I'm going to post something very soon about an incentive that we think we're going to offer to investors and see what they think the best incentive is. But part of it has to do with the use of the short-term rentals as an investor. Kind of incorporate a little bit of the timeshare without the garbage, just a pure perk with everything else you would get on a rental property. Just add that as a perk, a dramatically discounted rate. But we're going to offer it in certain options and see what people think. But they're going to get to choose it. So anyway, COVID allowed us to do that. That's, at the end of the day, that's a COVID thing. And then, so I've shown you guys all the markets, everything, all the graphics, the infographics. So what we've been working on as a team is we're launching our Axiom Consulting Group, Q1. We've been talking about it since April. All we've been doing, I shouldn't say all, from April to July, most of what we did was consult for free. I don't think I charged anybody for advice that we were giving because we were in the same spot. you guys know me. I am frigging transparent. I have not discussed this with Cindy or Greg, but as a law firm, we're down 30% revenue on the year. Can't do shit about it. Excuse my French. COVID came. I refused to let people go. And in hindsight, maybe that wasn't the best decision, but that's just the way I personally live. I've been through some downturns in the past, so it was expensive. And but what it did was allowed us to do marketing, focus on what we hadn't been doing that I wanted to do, and realize that because of all the different things we do and the different ventures we're in, and being a former bankruptcy lawyer, being involved in different businesses, we actually had a lot of good consulting advice. And then you add Jeff with his Lean Six Sigma automation and processes, and then Rob, who just, is like an artiste. We've had quite a bit of interest. So we've actually taken on 3 clients already in the last 3 weeks, but we haven't launched it officially till next year. But I'm trying to show something good came out of COVID, because I'm down 30% on law and 26% on title. And we started Q1 up. All of our numbers were up. So I am just like y'all. I may even be worse than y'all, depending if you actually had businesses. But so not only do I have investments that some did really well, some are still catching up from the COVID-related issues. To say we feel your pain is an understatement. It's probably been one of the least pleasant years of my life, but yet I'm still around. I've been around COVID, may have had it, may not have had it back in March. Eventually I'm gonna listen to my dad and get the antibodies test, but I was really sick the end of March. But the bottom line is we're around, we have great clients, I have great friends. I think all of you guys should think the same, and whatever is coming down for 2021, we'll get through it. The antibiotics or the vaccine, is promising. In my mind, it's a little early to bring it out, but I understand the risks are far less than the rewards, especially for people in high mortality conditions. So anyway, that wraps up 2020. Now, anybody want to hear about the coronavirus relief approved? And I apologize, I jumped the gun. This was finished 2 hours ago. I just assumed it would have been passed. And so for any of you that are just joining now, it has not passed. I'm going to repeat it again for those of you that weren't on. Trump has at least said on Twitter, and typically what he says on Twitter, he follows through with, but has said on Twitter that he may veto this because it doesn't provide enough relief for individuals and couples as far as cash payments. I tend to agree, although I don't qualify for any of it. We'll go over it in a second, but $600 for an individual and $1,200 for a couple, if you're going to provide relief, is not going to do a whole lot for, those especially on the East Coast, West Coast, Upper Midwest, who have been in more restricted areas, not been able to work, not been able to do other things. I'm not really sure how far 600 goes. So Trump is threatening to veto and wanting Congress to up that from 600 to 2,000 a person, and from 1,200 a couple to 4,000 a couple. And so I would say kudos to him for trying. I don't know if that's going to get through. My gut tells me there'll be something in between. But so just so everybody knows, it is a $2.1 or $2.3 trillion bill. Okay. Don't mistake yourselves. Don't be mistaken. The 5,563 plus pages, a very small portion of that had to do with directly to do with coronavirus relief. I don't think you want to read the bill. For those of you that haven't read the bill, I don't think it's something you guys want to read. You'll probably be disappointed because you think that all this money is going towards things that it doesn't need to go to. A lot of pork in the bill. The reality is it's also a budget. And so I'm not defending the amounts nor what it was spent on, but it doesn't surprise me because only 900 billion is actually coronavirus related relief. The rest is kind of a normal budget to get us through another 6 to 9 months before they need to pass another budget. So just wanted to put that out there as we go over topic. So I fit this all on one page because, as I said at the beginning, I'm a very good lawyer. I know how to read. I cannot read 5,500 and whatever 63 pages I can't even read it in 2 days, let alone skim it in 3 hours and try to pull the information and then tell Rob to create pretty slides. So we're going to go over this old school way. We're going to pretend like it was 15 years ago with no graphics. And I'm just going to put this on one slide. And I'm going to go over this. And then Cindy, after I go over this, is going to field any questions you have. I'm going to preface it with, I don't have any answers. Cindy doesn't have any answers, and Greg doesn't have any answers. What we can do is we can opine on what we believe the outcome is going to be based on history meaning the last 9 months. And I can tell you from my perspective of reading it, it's the most positive thing for us as investors and owners that I've seen. Is it a fix-all? Hell no. Does it bring us whole? Hell no. But it's better than the first two. And so I'll take better than the first two than having the exact same thing as the first two. So here we go. I gotta see what time it is. Make sure I'm good on time. 7:42. Yeah, I'm gonna get you guys out of here early unless you have questions. Everybody's got to do Christmas shopping and buy something for their favorite law firm. All right, here we go. I'm gonna hide screens of people, so if you're making faces at me, I can't see you. So $900 billion stimulus deal. I couldn't even add the 900 billion. I couldn't add the stimulus package together to get 900 billion. But what I can tell you is, what we're really looking at is the rental assistance. The rental assistance is kind of the biggest thing that's out there for us. So I'm going to go over this very slowly and briefly. So I'm just telling you right now, I cannot remember which real estate rag I read this in, but it was one of the big real estate rags. There's an estimated 70 billion in back rent that's owed since coronavirus started. The rental assistance program is purported to address 25 billion in rental assistance. Now you're going to say, oh, that's only about a third. It's really less than a third, because the way this is set up is if somebody qualifies for rental assistance, depending on how long they have not been able to pay rent or how long they've been unemployed, they could get up to 9 months of back rent and 3 months of future rent covered. So obviously the future rent is not estimated in the 70 billion in back rent up above, but let's go through this quickly. So this is different. This is not coming from the federal government. When I say not coming from the federal government, the federal government intends to flow money down to the state and local government level for those states and local governments that deem they need that money. They have agreed in the bill to provide no less than 200 million per state. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, but to give you an example, I believe New York is getting 1.5 billion of the 25 billion, 1.5 or 2.1. I think it's 1.5 billion. So that gives you an idea. Obviously, the more populated states are going to get more money. My gut tells me states that have been hit really, really hard may get more money. The Republic of California may get more money, but we don't know that for sure. So it hasn't been completely disclosed who is getting what, other than money is heading down for rental assistance. 90%, this is not that big a deal, but 90% of the money coming down is to be used to provide financial assistance. So it's for back or forward rent. Obviously, people, forward rent is rent that is not due yet. So it would be January, February, March rent. It can also be used for back and forward utilities. So for any utilities that haven't been paid over the last 9 months, it doesn't have to be 9, but it's capped at 9 going back, 3 going forward. And other housing expenses. Housing expenses are defined loosely. So my guess is the local and state authorities are going to have a little more expansive definitions on this. And I'm willing to bet that each state's going to be a little different. Sorry, just grabbing something to drink. So qualifications. This is where it gets interesting. Who qualifies? Okay, so let's use apartment complexes as an example, since most of us are involved in multifamily. It same works for single family rentals as well. So one or more persons in the household that is qualified for unemployment has experienced a reduction in income or some other financial hardship. Okay. That is probably 30% of my tenants. Doesn't mean that they haven't made their payment, but to our knowledge, they've experienced some sort of reduction in income or other financial hardship. Second, they have to demonstrate a risk of housing instability with past due utility bills or rent notices or notice of eviction. I believe this is an or. The first two are ors, and the second one is an and. First two meaning it's one or more in the household, or someone that demonstrated a risk of housing instability with past due utility. And then the third is and. The and part is your household income cannot be more than 80% of the area's median income per household. So, for example, if you have multifamily in the area, and I presume that's going to be probably zip code, unless they expand it to probably census tract. If the census tract median income is $50,000, in order for one of your tenants to qualify, their household income cannot be more than $40,000. That's 80% of 50,000. So that's key. And it's funny, a lot of you are probably saying, well, God, how are my tenants going to figure that out? There's a little, not a trick, but there's a bonus for the landlords coming up. What the bill also says is they anticipate being overwhelmed with individuals trying to get repayment for back rent and back utilities. So when it comes to that point, they're going to put in some priorities. So it's important to look at, this is who qualifies, and these are the people that are given top priority. So it doesn't mean if you're not top priority, you don't get it, but these people with top priorities will get money quicker. So first, if your household income does not exceed 50% of the area median income. So in that same example, if the median income is 50 grand and your tenant's median income is 25,000, or quite honestly, their reported median income is 25,000. There are a lot of tenants that may have jobs that pay cash, may not get W-4s or W-9s. So if it does not exceed 50%, they're a priority, or if one or more members of the household have been unemployed for 90 days. So if one or more of the household have been unemployed for 90 days, then they have a priority. Okay, so those are the things you should be looking at as a landlord. I'm gonna say it again. Those are the things you should be looking at as a landlord. That's the key, as a landlord. This is something that we've all been waiting for. When funds are approved, granted to the renters, they are paid to their landlords, okay? I'm gonna repeat this because it's gonna shock many of you that have not read this. If the funds are approved for a particular renter that meets either the qualifications or meets the qualifications but is in a priority position, those funds are paid directly to the landlords or utility company at the direction of the city or state authority, whoever is issuing the funds. Guys, that is huge, okay? We all bitched and complained about $600 and $1,200 and $300. They're doing $300 more in unemployment again, but that goes to the person, and there is no guarantee, and quite honestly, no nexus that the person is actually going to pay their bills. I hate to be Debbie Downer, but again, I'm a former bankruptcy lawyer. I assume the worst in everybody. There is no guarantee that they're actually going to pay their bills. So by number one, pushing this down to the state and local government, because the federal government just can't handle it, that is huge, okay? Huge, huge, huge. So basically what I think, let me finish up the next 2 points, then I'm going to summarize this section. Landlords may apply for assistance on behalf of their tenants with permission from the tenant. So in other words, I'm envisioning this as a tenant that you still have. That is my guess. I'm envisioning it, a tenant that is still with you, that's either paying all or a portion of the rent or has promised to pay. You like the tenant, they're waiting to get back up on their feet. And so the landlord actually applies. There'll be paperwork. None of it exists yet. It'll happen fairly quickly, but none of it exists yet. So there'll be paperwork that the landlord downloads through whatever sites that'll be set up, kind of like the SBA set up sites for PPP. So there'll be, but this would be by state and local. There'll be documents, and it shouldn't be that complicated, where you as the landlord document, or you write out, because you've had discussions with the tenant when they first started getting late on rent, blah, blah, blah. My understanding from reading the statute, the bill, and the bill is very, very long, you just have to get the tenant to sign off on it. Landlord submits it. Once it gets approved, money comes to landlord. And then the last term, as I stated up here, eligible households can receive up to 12 months of assistance. The way I read it, and it could change based on state and local, I read it as 9 months of past rent, 3 months of future rent. The reason I read that is because we're in December, and it wouldn't make sense to have 12 months of past rent when Corona really didn't have a huge impact until mid to end of March. So I read that. I was trying to figure out why. To me, that makes the most sense, why they kind of have it divided between 9 months and 3 months. So again, this is something actually that's really interesting, and that is a very positive gain for us as landlords or property owners. Now, it will require a lot of work, my guess, from your management company. So I hope there aren't any property managers that are management companies on here that are going to get upset, but you're going to have to push them. You're going to have to push these people, because this is real money and you want to get this money back. The reason I said I think it's geared more towards tenants that are current, that are living. So these would be your non-economic tenants. So they're living, but they're not paying, or they're paying behind. Because if you're filing on behalf of a tenant and you've already evicted the tenant, or the tenant has moved out, good luck trying to get the tenant to sign off on this, because the money goes to you, not to the tenant. Now, you may argue, hey, look, your credit won't be dinged, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that argument's going to hold water. And I don't think you're going to be able to find the tenant, quite honestly, the past due tenant. So my gut tells me it's going to be more beneficial to those that are missing a month or a month and a half, or have been doing partial pay for a little while. So this is huge. This is really, really big. I'm very excited about this. I look forward to some more information about it. It's supposed to start once it gets approved. They're supposed to put this in place, or at least start putting in place January 2nd or 3rd. I give it probably till the first, either last week of January, first week of February, before they can actually do it. But you guys should be talking to your property management companies yesterday, because that's when it was first announced, yesterday, about putting together a packet for each one of your deals on tenants that you're confident will sign this. I believe that tenants that are currently in apartments that are not able to make their bills will sign this, because they do want to look good for the property owners. They're obviously stayed there and didn't leave, so they like living where they're living. So again, I think this is good. It's nice to finally see some potential relief for us. It's only 9 months late. It'll be 10 months or 11 months by the time it finally comes down. And I'm not seeing the screen, but if there are questions, put the questions in. Cindy will ask them in a couple minutes. Real quick, stimulus checks. I just talked about that. Trump is threatening to veto the bill based on the amount of stimulus checks. So he'd like it to go. There's a typo on here. I apologize. I was in a hurry, but it's $600 if you make $75K or less as an individual. It's $1,200 if you make $150K or less as a couple. He'd like to bump those to $2,000 and $4,000 respectively. So it'd be interesting to see if he can pressure Congress to do that, or there's some sort of meet in the middle. 3 weeks, $300 per week, expanded unemployment benefits. We kind of went through that already. That's good for some people. It hasn't proven to be very beneficial for a lot of our clients in C-class, at least from our experience. So I don't put a lot of weight into that. I'm not in that position, but I don't put a lot of weight into that helping us out as landlords or property owners. And again, this is me having no emotion on the people that are suffering because of coronavirus or coronavirus related layoffs. I'm just looking at it solely from the owner's perspective. So don't, if you think I'm callous, I'm trying not to be. I'm just looking at it from our perspective. Excuse me. And lastly, I'll touch on one more topic I didn't put up here. The bill extends the CDC eviction moratorium until 1/31/21. I don't see this as a huge deal, quite honestly. It was extended to 12/31. I could have told anybody without even a full length bill, either the federal government or the CDC was going to extend it through the end of January. They're never going to evict people around Christmas or New Year's, getting into the coldest time of the year. My gut tells me it may be extended even more. This is to get through the transfer of power from Trump to Biden. So by extending to 1/31, then the Biden administration can decide if they want to extend it more, depending on what's going on with the virus and the economy. According to the same real estate rag that talks about the 70 billion in back rent, they estimate that this eviction moratorium affects 40 million renters. I don't think I disagree with that. Affect is a very broad word, but it affects 40 million renters. And it's so broad that in order to qualify for non-eviction, if you're an individual making 99,000 or less, you qualify to have your eviction stayed. If you're a couple and you make 198,000 or less, my guess is if you had made $198,000 or less, you also qualify for a stay in eviction. Excuse me, that's not COVID, that's me talking too much. Finally, I didn't talk about it here, but they are reinstituting the PPP program. So I'm okay saying it. We applied for PPP for several of our companies, qualified, got it. They're instituting the PPP program again. It's, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think it was like 284 billion. Not as much as last time, but they're not allowing public companies. They're not allowing companies with more than 300 employees. Restaurants are getting a bailout, which I think they should, because most of us have been using them or using dine out only or carry out only. The difference between restaurants and those of us that have our own businesses that are not in restaurants, they'll get to use 3.5 times salary and expenses, whereas we get to use 3.5 times monthly salary and expenses, where we will get to use 2.5 times monthly salary and expenses. So I'm going to say this one time. I'm going to say it slowly because we were inundated with calls about PPP, and we are not the PPP experts. We were just talking about it a lot early on. I'm telling anybody that thinks they can qualify for it. I'll give you one of the qualifiers for the second round in a minute. You need to be talking to whichever lender gave you the first PP. You need to send them a request right now that you want to be top of the list. Okay. It's going to be the same lender. It doesn't have to be the same lender, but if the lender got it for you in the first place, assume they'll get it for you in the second place. So we've already done it. I'm going to exercise it. I told you guys from the beginning how much two of my companies have lost. I can't get that back. I kept people employed. And quite honestly, if I take the position that the government caused that loss, which I'm taking the position, not in a negative way, solely that I deserve the money, and it doesn't go to me, it just goes to cover salary and money that I actually put out of my pocket back into our companies. I believe I'm justified in requesting the money. So the biggest element they look at is you have to show that one of the quarters during 2020 was at least 25% less in revenue than the same quarter in 2019. Okay, that's kind of the smell test. So if your financials cannot show a decrease of 25% or more in one of the quarters in 2020 over 2019, you're not going to qualify for it. So I would strongly encourage you to look at your financials if you think you're the type of company that could utilize PPP, and you start them now. I can't tell you how many people missed out on PPP or got just tidal waved by those that knew what they were doing, and some never got their money. Some got it 2 or 3 months late when it was too late. That is going on. I won't say now because he hasn't signed the bill yet, but you should already talk to your lender. You should already have your accountant or bookkeeper starting to prepare the information. The exact same thing you should be doing with your property management company. they should be preparing the information to try to get reimbursement on some of the lost rent. I can't stress that enough, because a lot of people are going to call us in 4 or 5 weeks. Will you remind me again what we're supposed to do? And I can't get a hold of my lender, and the government authority is asking for all this documentation. You can read this. It kind of tells you what you need. It's obvious what you need to show. John Smith did not pay his rent. John Smith is still employed, is still a tenant of ours. John Smith gave me notice in writing that he lost his job, or his job went from 20 bucks an hour to 12 bucks an hour. Okay. This is not complicated. Create the file. Most likely you'll just scan the file, fill the doc, have the document signed by the tenant to verify it's true. And hopefully it's as quick as PPP money, and you're going to get reimbursement of some of your lost rent. That's at least how it looks. So I am going to stop sharing and see if there are any questions. But before I ask for questions, I'm going to say one more time, anybody that wants to put their name and information out there, a little bit about themselves in the chat box. We already gathered an opt-in with our landing page where you could opt in and say something about yourselves. I know what a lot of you are going through, especially those that don't live in Texas and other places that are more open. You don't have that option to have a lot of interaction with others and develop the pre-existing relationships if you're doing 506B. So please, please, please enter your information in here. Jeff is going to, I wouldn't say in the morning because it looks like we've had a lot of chats on here, but Jeff will try to put it together a nice spreadsheet plus what people have put in initially when they signed up, so you guys can interact with each other. I truly, truly, truly miss our happy hours. The disadvantage of COVID is we don't have, Jeff's drinking. We don't have a mix and mingle like we used to do for 45 minutes afterwards. And it was cool. That's when deals were talked about and people were doing things. But what this has allowed me to do is meet a lot of interesting people that are not in Texas. And so to me, that's really cool. I'm trying to look at the positive on COVID. So I got a consulting group. I got a huge group of funnel of interesting people. Eventually, Daryl Murphy and I are going to do a deal. I see him looking down. We keep talking about it. And Kevin is about to launch something that's going to be very impressive. Team Millennial. Who doesn't like that? But there are a lot of people on here that I'm very excited about who I've never met had it not been for COVID. So not that I like COVID. I'll leave one last thing before I start answering questions. So sometimes we may not hear all the information that we might want to hear about COVID and what's going on. Take it for whatever you want. Most of you know I have a daughter who lives in Israel. She's been there since she was 14. She recently got out of the IDF. She went to high school there, graduated top of her class, was a sniper in the IDF, which is pretty cool. But she's been trying to get back home because she's going to start college at UT in the fall. And Israel did a public alert last night. I think it was around, I don't know, it was 10 o'clock our time. So probably it was 5 a.m. in the morning their time, that they have shut down all flights, period, into Israel because of the new round of COVID related cases that are from this kind of, they had a term for it. It was in Hebrew, so I don't know how to say it, but a mutation of COVID, a little bit different than the normal mutations. Didn't say it was more deadly. They did not say that. They just said it was more contagious. And so my reading of what it was, Israel is very forthcoming with health information because they have very limited, for such a technological country. For those of you who haven't been there, it's tiny. It's smaller than Rhode Island. So you have 8 million, 9 million people living in a very small area. So they are very in tune with what's going on. So you'll notice flights out of London, flights out of England are canceled. Most of Europe is starting to cancel. Probably a good thing to control just additional spread, but nothing about the vaccine. The vaccine still seems to be able to prevent it. I mean, Jeff's up here. He seems to be feeling fine, thank God.
Yes, thank you.
Where is he? Oh, there you are.
I'm right here.
Had a sore throat for a couple days. Those of you that didn't hear about it, Jeff, he got the Rona this afternoon right after I kissed him. was great.
It was
Um,
great.
I'm kidding. I didn't kiss Jeff.
Well, we share everything, right?
Jeff's my
Just
best
for
friend,
those,
godfather of my kids. Known him for 20 years. He had a sore throat on Sunday, another sore throat on Monday, and he goes into the doctor. I'm not violating HIPAA because I'm not going to give details. And Jeff said it was okay, but he goes and gets the short test, the quick
rapid
test. I've
test,
had
rapid
two of
test.
them already. Rapid test that the doctor says you're clear, but they still decide to give him the test that goes to the nose and out the rear end. It goes all the way up into your brain, comes down your spine, and comes out your tushy. So Jeff decides to get that test too, and that test for 17 different things. And now I'm going to make a little fun of Jeff. We're sitting, Rob and I are still being cautious. We're sitting 8 feet away from him. We would not let him sit at our table this morning while we were working. He's over in the corner, 2 o'clock, just closes his laptop, says, up, done, out of here. I got to go. I'm like, Jeff, where are you going? He said, he goes, well, I tested positive. I'm like, whoa. You don't just walk out and say you tested positive. Tested positive for what? He goes, well, it wasn't Corona, but I got a message from the testing center. I tested positive. I need to quarantine. And I'm like, Jeff, what the hell did you test positive for if it wasn't Corona? It wasn't Corona. And so Rob and I are just looking at him, and Rob's waiting for me, and he says it's SARS. And so Rob looks at me, and I love to look up everything. I'm like, this MF, SARS is Corona, but I have to look it up first. Huh?
SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah, I know. You just said SARS initially. So I look it up real quick, and I'm like, wait a minute. Jeff, did you test positive for SARS-CoV-2? Yeah, it's not Corona. I'm like, you dumb shit, excuse my French. That is Corona. They just nickname it Corona 19 because it was founded in the year or discovered in 2019, allegedly. So anyway, my daughter's had it. Jeff's had it. Jeff's probably on the back end of it already. His symptoms seem to be getting better, but everybody be safe. Now, Cindy, I really can't talk much anymore.
Real quick before you do questions, just to answer a couple of them on there, everybody will get a copy of this in the chat window and a copy of the slides tomorrow morning sometime. And then for those of you that have opted in and even in the chat window, I'll send out an Excel to everybody to share everyone's context just for those that opted in before the end of the day tomorrow.
Real quick, I'm going to make fun of my partner in a couple deals. I have David Devenyenko on here, and I don't know if you guys can see him. He's in his space chair with his space headset on. And, I kind of have joked around about, it's really funny that he's always in kind of a gaming chair, and he's older than I am, which is not old at all, but he's older than I am. And so it's really funny. Today we were on 2 very long conference calls. Both calls, the other party wanted to know if he was some sort of, was an astronaut or was involved in something because of his chair and his headset. And I tried to be funny. I said, no, he's just our Russian cosmonaut that we always have on our calls. But I want to give a shout out to David. He's been a pleasure to work with. He and I have suffered through some of the COVID stuff on some of our deals. We're working on a couple deals together. He has a very good sense of humor. And I can tell you, if you guys ever work with someone from Russia, when they try to tell you, when they give you an answer, it's really funny. Let me disagree with you because this, or the answer is I agree but disagree. Okay, it's hysterical. So with David, we just let him keep going until we can actually figure out which answer we want to hear from him. But he gives you both sides. So he agrees and disagrees sometimes with himself, but it's Russian and it's really funny and it keeps things lively. And David, I'm glad to see you here. What do you got, Cindy? Any questions?
Really, I think you summarized everything. There's several questions about what if the tenant's in eviction or has been evicted, if they'll be able to recover, and what if the owner's paying utilities? How does that work?
So I'll answer that real quickly because I am going to take an educated guess, guys, because I'm telling you, it is going to depend on, quite honestly, which county you're in. We all know that judges in different counties are doing different things regardless of what the restrictions are. But the way I read it, if you're an all bills paid landlord, that you will get reimbursement for the utilities as well, the same way. You're almost, in my mind, I think the state and local governments will look at you as a conduit for a utilities provider if you can show that those utilities were not paid by that tenant and you've got a certain amount allocated, I think you submit it just like you would anything else. Tenants and eviction, absolutely. Now, tenants and eviction, they're evicted because of something non-COVID related. Good luck with that. I wouldn't even try to push it, because one of the things I didn't go and talk about is they have like a $1.2 billion funding for essentially the SBA to look for fraud, which they never set up before. So they're to look for fraud with the PPP programs, and they're to look for fraud with the government and local authority assistance programs. And one last thing real quick, I need to ask this. On the PPP, I believe there was a section in there, I'm pretty sure I read it, but I can't pull it right now, where if you're taking $150,000 or less, it can be forgiven on the second round. So that's a magic number if you can get to that number. Cindy?
I think we're almost covered. The only other thing is someone made a suggestion that they want to put in any new leases to have the tenant authorize the recovery.
That's interesting. That's an interesting question. I think you could do that, but I don't think whatever document that's going to be created, I don't think you can have that document signed, because it's going to be very date specific. So if the tenant signs the document on January 1st, and let's say COVID is still around and we're still in a global pandemic, or we're in pandemics in certain parts of the country, and in March and April, they can't make their payment, I think you as a landlord have to have the documentation for March and April and send them the same form. Now, you can have them in the lease say they agree not to contest and they will sign. But we all know that tenants don't necessarily follow all the provisions in the lease. I'm playing devil's advocate. It certainly wouldn't hurt. I don't know though how many tenants are going to know they can do this, because it's more of a landlord issue. And so part of me, I'm just thinking out loud, part of me might be a little concerned that you're almost giving the tenant a pass not to pay rent, knowing that the landlord can just go out and seek rent, and there may not be any of that 20 whatever billion dollars left. So I don't think I would put it as a document in the lease package. For me, the moment someone came to me, if I was the property management company, and said, hey, listen, someone's sick, or someone got laid off, or we can't make ends meet, we can't pay this, I would start documenting it right then and there. And I would apply on behalf of the tenant for the following 3 months. That's what I would do. And so then you're going to have a tenant for life. If you want that tenant, you're going to have a tenant for life, because you just gave that tenant 90 days of life they didn't think they had. And so if you're that type of an owner and you're looking for repeat customers, so to speak, or long-lasting tenants, that could be something that is so much better than giving a pizza away at the end of the month, or doing something else where you truly can actually help them get money and you're helping yourself. So long story short, I don't know if I would personally recommend my clients or any of the deals I'm in to sign something in advance, but I would start the process the moment a new tenant started going through this, assuming they didn't breach any other provisions in the lease.
Really, I think that is everything else is people opting in and wanting to get information, and lots of good contacts in here.
Okay, so next time, wow, Bill Carson, haven't seen Bill in a long time. Next time, I think I'm gonna ask Jeff. I don't know how to do it, but Jeff is the guru. We'll do some meeting rooms, and we'll let you guys for like the last 5 or 10 minutes. It'll just randomly break people into like meeting rooms of 5 or 6 or 7 people. I think if you guys exchange information, introduce yourselves, talk to each other. In my understanding of 506B, that's the first contact. And as long as you're not talking about a very specific deal that you're doing right now, but you're just getting general information on each other. I see Greg's eyes going up. Thinking, oh, Merrill shouldn't have said that. But I've looked at how, I don't want to say lenient, how strict or non-strict the judges in general are being on things. So face-to-face like this, and calling out people and talking to them. I never do a 506B. I won't say I never will. I just haven't done one. I'm always 506C, so I talk to the world, but I think it might be another way for you guys to interact until I can throw my $2,500 happy hours. By the way, thank God I don't have to throw those, because with COVID and a hit in business, I'd be bankrupt and I couldn't have these. So the $49 a month Zoom is so much better than $2,500 a month happy hours. I know you guys aren't as happy, but I am. I'll start emailing you guys pictures of wine and beer, or I'll have Jeff pay for it since he seems to have a lot at his house, Jeff King. If you guys don't have any more questions, great. I appreciate it. I hope everybody has happy holidays. Try to stay safe. We'll circulate all this tomorrow. If you have questions, feel free to email us at info@callisterlaw.com. If you didn't want to ask them in the group, questions are free, unless you're asking 1,000 questions. Questions are free. Happy to help. And again, everybody take care. Thanks for listening tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.